And for more on Venezuela's plight, I'm joined now by Eric Farnsworth. He is the Vice President of the Council of the Americas. Eric, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So we've got a lot of breaking news really on Venezuela at this hour. Word that government workers are now going to return to a 5-day week. They had been on a 2-day work week since April. What's the likely impact of that on this energy crisis and the overall economic picture?
Well, things seem to be getting marginally better from the energy perspective. The price of oil has gone up, and that's Venezuela's top and almost only commodity. And so even though the price is now not as high as Venezuela needs for the country really to be doing well, it's doing better. At the same time, the drought that has affected the power grid because of all the hydroelectricity that's produced in Venezuela is easing somewhat. And so the government, I think, is looking for an opportunity to try to ease the lives of the people that, frankly, have become very difficult. It's a political issue more than an economic issue because right now the government is trying to hold on to power. It's trying to resist the opposition call for a recall referendum this year. And the more that it can give benefits to its people in some way, perhaps they feel that they can hold on for a little bit longer.
Just out of curiosity, what is the price of oil that Venezuela needs?
Well,
because it's about 95% of their economy.
Yeah, and Venezuelan crude actually trades at a discount on global markets because it's heavy crude, and so it requires additional refining.
Right.
So the basket that it's trading at is about $40 a barrel right now. What it's needed, I mean, it depends on who you talk to and what the estimate is, but anywhere from 70 to 80 just to begin to,
double.
yeah, absolutely. There's a long way to go.
You talked about the referendum. John Kerry, the U.S. Secretary of State, just came out in support of that referendum against the president, Nicolas Maduro, but at the same time also announced that he's going to begin talking again with his Venezuelan counterpart. How do you read that and whether it can actually improve the relationship, but also, more importantly, improve the economy in Venezuela?
Yeah, the referendum is a constitutional process in Venezuela. In fact, President Chavez, when he was alive, went through a referendum process earlier in the 2000s, 2004. So this is a process that Venezuela knows. The issue here is, can Venezuela postpone it until the new calendar year? And the reason why is because if so, then assuming that Maduro faces the recall referendum and loses, his vice president would step into the presidency, so the Chavistas would maintain power. If indeed it's held this year and Maduro loses, then it's a whole new election. So there's a timing issue here. Secretary Kerry has been open about that. The U.S. government has said, by Venezuela's own constitution, hold the referendum this year. And as the Organization of American States meets in the Dominican Republic today and this week, that really is something that they're discussing. What will it do economically? Look, I mean, in order to get Venezuela back on track, we've talked about the price of oil, and that's out of their hands in some measure. But what they really need to do is they need to have a national consensus on some very difficult things that they need to do for economic reform. And that requires the support of the opposition and the Venezuelan people. They don't have that now, and they're not going to. Venezuela is a very divided country. So until you actually have a more even-handed approach and a more unified political system, I think it's going to be really difficult to take those economic reforms that are required. And that political unification comes through the referendum process. So it wouldn't be an immediate economic effect, but it would be, in my view, a condition precedent to get to those economic reforms that are really required.
There's also this issue of massive borrowing that Venezuela has been doing, including about $50 billion US from China. The Reuters news agency now reporting exclusively that Venezuela is in talks with China to get a grace period to pay back some of these oil for loans deals. But, I mean, more broadly, how much negotiating power does Venezuela even have right now? I mean, they probably are trying to do this with a lot of different lenders.
Well, you know the old joke, if you owe the bank $1, the bank owns you. If you owe the bank $1 million, you own the bank. Yeah. And in some ways, this is what's going on. Venezuela owes a lot of money to a lot of people. But the question is, what leverage do they have to get it back? So Venezuela does have some negotiating room here. This summer, actually, their payment schedule is relatively light. Where you're really going to see it is this autumn, when about $6 billion of government bonds come due to various parties. And so that's where a lot of analysts are looking ahead to say, will Venezuela meet these bond payments? Will it default? And if so, what will the implications of that be? Many people are saying with the price of oil again ticking up slightly, they'll have the capacity to make those bond payments. But then the question becomes, in the new year, what do they do and where do they get the revenue to meet bonds coming forward? So what you have now is the possibility of a negotiated process to say, let's get this through the autumn period, let's pay off on the schedule that's required and get into the new year and see where that takes us.
Real quickly, the impact on Venezuela's neighbors. Obviously, it's a trading partner, particularly in Mercosur, with a lot of South American countries, but obviously a big trading partner with Asian countries such as China. How are they looking at the situation, and what can they do to hedge their bets?
I think everybody's looking at Venezuela with some real concern right now for the humanitarian reasons as well as the political reasons. Economically, the real country that's being troubled by this is Colombia, because Colombia is the neighbor, is the traditional top trade partner of Venezuela. China and the United States both have a very significant oil and energy relationship with Venezuela. Brazil has an interesting relationship with Venezuela in that a lot of the contracts that the Venezuelans have signed have been with Brazilian companies, and the question is, will they get paid for the work that they've done?
That could ripple effect then.
Absolutely right. And so, but you know, in the context of actual economic distress that other countries might be facing because of Venezuela's distress, it's not that significant because the relationship really has been one of trade based on petroleum. And so if you're not engaged in that sector with Venezuela, maybe it's not going to be affecting you that greatly. But having said that, yes, it is of real concern in the neighborhood.
Eric Farnsworth, with a little bit of a silver lining for Venezuela and its trading partners, our thanks to you.